While NASA posts pictures on social media, China is quietly building mining robots on the moon. And what they're digging for could make oil look like pocket change. We're talking about an energy source so powerful that just 100 tons could power the entire planet for a year. China's already testing the equipment. Their timeline? 2028. And here's the kicker. By the time the world figures out what's happening, it'll already be too late. There's an isotope on the moon called helium-3. Never heard of it? That's exactly the point. While everyone's been arguing about electric cars and solar panels, China discovered something that makes both look like Stone Age technology. Helium-3 is the holy grail of clean energy. It powers nuclear fusion without the nasty radioactive waste that keeps everyone up at night. One small tank of this stuff could replace an entire coal power plant. But here's where it gets wild. Earth has almost none of it. The moon? It's got roughly 1 million tons just sitting there in the dirt, waiting to be scooped up. And China figured this out before anyone else took it seriously. Think about it like this. Imagine if one country controlled all the world's oil in 1850, before cars were even invented. That's the position China is moving into right now, except the stakes are about 1,000 times higher. We're not talking about fueling cars, we're talking about powering entire civilizations for thousands of years. NASA's known about helium-3 since the Apollo missions, but they treated it like a fun fact in a science textbook. China saw it as the key to controlling the next century. And while NASA's been dealing with budget cuts and political red tape, China's been playing the long game. They're not just planning missions, they're planning an empire. In 2019, China landed Chang'e 4 on the far side of the moon. The media called it a historic achievement. But nobody mentioned where exactly they landed. The far side isn't random. It's one of the most helium-3 rich zones on the entire lunar surface. Coincidence? Not even close. Every single Chinese lunar mission since then has been laser-focused on one thing: mapping and testing locations with the highest concentration of helium-3. They're not exploring, they're surveying a gold mine. Now let's talk about leaked documents. And yeah, before you ask, these aren't conspiracy theories. Satellite imagery and Chinese space program white papers have shown testing facilities for lunar mining equipment. We're talking actual robots designed to excavate moon dirt, heat it to 600 degrees Celsius, and extract helium-3 gas. They've been refining this technology for years, while NASA's still debating the budget for Artemis missions. China's timeline is crystal clear: test phases by 2028, full mining operations by 2035. That's 10 years from now, not some distant sci-fi future, 10 years. But wait, it gets better, or worse, depending on where you're sitting. China's building reusable rockets specifically designed for lunar cargo transport, not people, cargo. They're not interested in planting flags and taking selfies. They're building supply chains, the kind of infrastructure that says, we're not visiting, we're staying. And here's the part that should terrify every other space agency on Earth. They're at least a decade ahead of anyone else. NASA's still trying to get boots back on the moon. China's already planning the loading docks. Oh, and one more thing before we move on. India's trying to catch up. Europe's forming committees. And Russia's, well, let's just say they're having other problems right now. But the gap between China and everyone else isn't shrinking. It's growing. Every year they get further ahead while everyone else argues about funding and international cooperation. China's not interested in cooperation. They're interested in domination. Let's talk numbers, because this is where your jaw should hit the floor. Conservative estimates put the value of helium-3 on the moon at around $3 billion per ton. Now multiply that by 1 million tons. We're looking at $3 quadrillion worth of energy resources. That's more than the entire global economy, multiple times over. Whoever controls that doesn't just become rich, they become the single most powerful entity in human history. They could set energy prices for the entire planet. Every country, every corporation, every person would depend on them for power. China's not stupid. They know fusion technology isn't perfected yet. Current reactors are still experimental, and we're probably a decade or two away from commercial fusion power plants. But here's the genius move. They're positioning themselves to own the fuel before the engines are even built. It's like buying up all the world's uranium in 1920, 30 years before nuclear power existed. When fusion finally works, and it will work, China will already own the gas station. The geopolitical implications make your head spin. Right now, countries fight wars over oil. Entire regions become unstable because of energy resources. Now imagine all that power concentrated in one place, controlled by one nation. China wouldn't need to threaten anyone. They just need to turn off the tap. No energy means no economy. No economy means no military. No military means no sovereignty. It's checkmate before the game even starts. And military technology? Fusion-powered weapons would make nuclear arsenals look like fireworks. We're talking about energy densities that could power directed energy weapons, railguns, and propulsion systems that currently exist only in science fiction. The country that masters fusion first doesn't just win the energy race, they win the military race, the economic race, and every other race that matters. Now, you're probably thinking, wait, isn't space supposed to be for everyone? Aren't there treaties? Oh, sweet summer child. Yes, there's the Outer Space Treaty from 1967. It says no country can claim territory on the moon. Sounds great on paper, but here's the loophole, big enough to drive a lunar rover through. It says nothing about claiming resources. Nothing. Zero. Zilch. China can't plant a flag and call the moon theirs, but they absolutely can say, hey, we're just developing these resources for the benefit of all humanity, and then accidentally forget to share. The treaty was written during the Cold War when moon bases were science fiction. Nobody thought to add rules about mining operations because nobody believed it would actually happen. Oops. So China's operating in a legal gray zone that's technically international cooperation, but practically looks a whole lot like monopolization. And by the time the international community agrees on new rules, which, knowing the UN, will take approximately forever, China will already have operational mining bases. Other countries are starting to panic, but panic doesn't build rockets. The United States passed the Space Act of 2015, basically saying American companies can own what they mine in space. Cool idea, except American companies are still designing PowerPoint presentations, while China's designing processing plants. Europe's talking about partnerships. India's launching impressive missions, but they're still in the learning phase. Japan's interested but cautious, and everyone's politely pretending that being 10 years behind isn't a catastrophic problem. It is. Here's what nobody wants to say out loud. We're watching the birth of the first space superpower in real time. Not a spacefaring nation, a space superpower. There's a difference. One explores space, the other controls it. And control of space means control of Earth, because everything down here depends on energy. Food production, water purification, transportation, communication, defense, everything runs on power. Whoever owns the ultimate power source owns the future. It's that simple and that terrifying. So where does this leave us? While TikTok argues about celebrities and news channels obsess over the same stories every day, humanity is quietly approaching the most important decade in its history. The decisions made in the next 10 years will determine the next 1,000, and most people have no idea it's even happening. China's not making speeches about it, they're not bragging, they're just doing it. Mission after mission, test after test, building after building. Silent, efficient, unstoppable. NASA's trying to respond, but they're handicapped by politics, budget cycles, and public interest that wanes every time a mission doesn't go perfectly. The Artemis program is amazing, but it's also years behind schedule and billions over budget. That's not NASA's fault, it's the system they're forced to work within. China doesn't have that problem. When China's government decides something is a priority, it happens. No debates, no budget committees, no election cycles, just execution. And they decided lunar helium-3 is the priority over a decade ago. The technology China's developing isn't just for the moon. Mastering lunar resource extraction means mastering asteroid mining. It means building orbital factories. It means creating entirely new industries in space that don't depend on launching everything from Earth. They're not planning for moon bases, they're planning for space infrastructure that makes Earth-based manufacturing look primitive. And every piece of that infrastructure gets powered by helium-3 that they'll control. Some experts think we'll see Chinese helium-3 shipments arriving on Earth by the mid-2030s. Others think the timeline's aggressive, and we're looking at the 2040s. But here's what everyone agrees on. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And whenever it happens, the world order changes overnight. Countries that spent centuries building power through military might, economic influence, and diplomatic networks will suddenly find themselves dependent on Chinese energy. The implications ripple through everything: international relations, military strategy, economic policy, even cultural influence. Energy is power. Always has been, always will be. And the most unsettling part? This isn't a secret conspiracy. This is happening in broad daylight. China publishes their space program goals. The mining equipment exists. The timelines are public. The technology is real. Everyone can see it happening, but almost nobody's looking. It's like watching someone walk toward the edge of a cliff in slow motion, while everyone else is distracted by shiny objects. 10 years ago, people would have called this science fiction. Today, it's engineering. Tomorrow, it's history. And by the time most people realize what just happened, the moon won't be that romantic silver thing poets write about. It'll be the reason their lights turn on, or don't, depending on decisions being made right now in Beijing. The clock's ticking. The race is already over. China's just waiting for everyone else to realize they lost.